Hi, my name is Nika. I am a graduating master's student this 2022 for big data analytics at San Diego State University. This is actually my thesis. So that's right, David was saying this is going to be a slightly longer talk. I'm going to try and keep it as high level as possible, and then you guys can ask me the details probably after the talk or something. But yeah, this is my thesis. The name is Io resto a casa. That means I stay home in Italian. And so I got that Zoom notification for the recording. Anyway, so it's going to be a temporal and translation comparison using word clouds, frequency tables, PMI, and latent Dirichlet allocation topic models. So these are my thesis committee members. And then I also want to recognize the following professors for helping me in this body of work. So, and the biggest one I want to give a shout out to is my research group, which is a couple of these labs: the HTMA lab, Crowd Fight COVID-19, Metabolism of Cities Living lab. These are basically a bunch of multidisciplinary students and faculty at San Diego State who basically does the harvesting of the data and are observing a lot of the COVID numbers throughout the world, specifically like here in San Diego, a couple of cities in Italy as well. So the work started basically in March of 2020 during the start of COVID-19. And then basically the context of the tweets that I've harvested, basically the first one is the situation, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. Geographically, I picked Milan, Italy, specifically because it's closest to the city where they first detected COVID outside of Asia. So if you guys remember, it was a huge deal because Italy became one of the first to have the military lockdowns within Europe. And also they have a lot, it's kind of like the center of economic, academic, and political achievement in Italy. So without saying too many words, the temporal context for this would be the lockdown period, which is March 11th to March 25th of 2020. And then the post-lockdown period, which is May 4th to May 18th of 2020. So the fields involved are computational linguistics, social media analysis in Italy, and the impact of COVID-19 in Milan. So I believe that this is really important because of the continuous globalization. The other thing too is I'm kind of like a language nut. I currently know 3 languages, and Italian would be probably like my 4th. So maybe like 3.5, almost 4 languages at this point. And it's really interesting because you can see the evolution of social media and language as it progresses. And understanding social media can help us understand and mitigate societal issues, especially in a pandemic. So as we're experiencing right now, there's also like a misinformation war with the Ukraine and US and Russian war. So, okay. Don't mind too many of the words. The main research questions here are: what's the difference between phase 1, which is the lockdown period, and phase 2, which is the post-lockdown period? And then the second one would be a translation comparison between the text mining outcomes between Italian tweets versus translated tweets. So basically, the lab collected the tweets using the Twitter standard search API. And then assuming that they are all Italian, we use DeepL translate it to English. Both were cleaned and both were processed using the word cloud PMI and LDA, and there's a comparison. So as far as data collection, we needed to get a developer account and request Twitter credentials for that. And there I have the Python Twitter collection script if anybody needs to know any of that. But basically we've collected over 500,000 tweets or almost 1 gig of data. And they were harvested using some English keywords here and Italian keywords as well. Anyway, so like I said, the data translation tool that we used was DeepL Translator. And they are, basically advertising themselves to be better than Google and Apple on certain languages. And as you can see, like when you're harvesting social media data from a specific geographical standpoint, they're not all in a certain language. There are a couple of other languages. So I had to use Google Translate for the languages that DeepL Translator does not have. So here's an example of what I use for data cleaning. Basically, in Italian, as you can see here, this is the original tweet or part of the original tweet. The stem tweet, basically, you're trying to get the word to its root form. And so any form of suffix after will be kind of shaven off. So as you can see here, it's ritornando, which means return, by the way. And then as you tokenize it, which means that you're separating it with a comma so you can process it better, it became return here. In English, when you translated it, when we've translated it, it just automatically stemmed it. So the methods that I used were word clouds in Python and latent Dirichlet topic modeling, which is in R. There is a Python version of this, but I don't think it worked on my machine very well, so I used R. The quantitative methods that I've used are Python, NumPy, Pandas, and the pointwise mutual information score, which is the PMI score for word association. So this is the applied equation that I use. So each one has a phase, so like the time phase. So and then the corpus would be the phase 1 and 2 of that language. So yeah. All right. And then so I wanted to discuss the results. So when you're looking at word clouds here, you're looking at the size of the number, because the bigger the word, the more frequent it is. So here, Fabrizio Romano is a sports newscaster, as well as Tancredi Palmieri. They were mainly discussing a lot about soccer and how people were so pissed off that soccer games were canceled during the lockdown period. With phase 2, as you can see, there's a lot more focus on the Lombardy region where Milan is located. Stanza Selvaggia is also kind of like a street or entertainment newscaster. So she'll be on the street, like looking at, are people following social distancing rules and things like that. Obviously, people are still, kind of worried about the quarantine. Like they are, they're not under lockdown anymore. However, they're required to do some social protocols for COVID. And then I had to kind of quantify everything to make sense of that, because obviously, like, word clouds are pretty, but you need to kind of make sense of them. So I had to use a frequency table to do this. And so what I'm mainly looking at here are the phase 1 in Italian, phase one in English, and comparing them. Now the number helps, but I think what helped me more here would be the ranking. So I ranked them in descending order, and as you can see, there are a lot of discrepancies. As you can see, Italy here has a lot more occurrences than Italia. And what I'm guessing is because there are more instances of Italy or the English language Italy, and it's counting it as that. Obviously, there are synonyms and other things that will get in the way. And then the pointwise mutual information score. This one, the main weakness of this is that if it's a rare word within the corpus, it will highlight the PMI score will be higher. And so it's the same thing. I'm looking at, hey, what's the most common and what words are more associated with each other. So I put the PMI score here, as well as the ranking of the word in descending order. And finally, I use the LDA viz in R. There is a version of this in Python, like I said, but the way that this works is if this is a topic, right? All of these words here are the words that are relevant within that topic. And you can adjust the lambda score to to know or to calibrate basically what the words, what is considered to be a topic. So for me, I picked the lambda 0.4 up here, as you can see. And yeah, so that's how I came up with that. And basically, I put all the keywords for a certain topic and kind of like label the topics to see if they have any similarities in the Italian to English translation. And then here, so that this is for the Italian one, and this is for the English one. And I highlighted the ones that are that have similarities between the two. So restrictions on movement, public health measures. And then in phase 2, there's more blaming the government for handling of the virus, swab test costs, that kind of thing. So, and then I just basically tried to see how much they are interrelated. And as you can see, I put a lot of arrows. I'm trying not to make it super confusing, but to highlight just a few, a lot of people were talking about COVID positive soccer players within phase 1, anti-minimization of the virus, like saying that, oh, it's just a flu when it's really, kind of life-threatening for everyone. And obviously the Bergamo death toll. For phase 2, a lot of people were discussing more social issues. And then they had a thing where they were trying to free the mafia bosses because they apparently were trying to justify that they could just be in house arrest because a lot of people in the prisons were getting COVID. And then obviously satire on COVID-19 minimization. So for the temporal comparison, I think I have pretty much the same thing as far as the method comparison, right? So for frequency tables, you are looking at the bigger picture purpose. And for PMI, they're looking at distinct words representing a subcorpus. There's a focus on rare tweets here because of the way that the score works. And I would say that it's best for medium complexity. And the most in-depth one would be the one with the crazy arrows, which is the LDA topic modeling. It's most in-depth, and you're mostly looking at retweets and original tweets as well. It's heavily reliant on a tweet corpus in the beginning because I had to, put it in all these tables. And I think the biggest threat would be, misspellings, encoding issues. It can't detect sarcasm, but I think it can be better later on. And then for the translation comparison, I think what I learned most was for frequency tables and word clouds, it's pretty much easier to see the errors there. For PMI, as a non-Italian language learner, what I'm learning is they find there's certain words that fit a certain context better. So you can find linguistic nuances there better. But the weakness here is that it's harder to find linguistic error patterns because it's mostly looking at unique tweets. Yeah, and then I really like the LDA topic modeling. However, I understand that it can't work all the time, like because of time constraints. So the limitations, I guess I could skip this one. The conclusion here is basically that phase 1, people were more concerned about COVID-19 and the disruption of normal routines like the soccer events and the personalities within soccer that are getting COVID. And they were more focused on Italy as a whole. Phase 2 is more focused on health, political criticism of handling the virus, and the focus on the Lombardy region itself. So a brief view on the translation errors would be words have higher frequency. Like I said, this is one of those contextual nuances that happen. So Giovanni means Giovanni, gente, and persone all mean people. But however, Giovanni actually means young people. So it just depends on how you're using it. And then there's also encoding issues. I believe I can fix this, but I haven't figured it out yet. So if y'all know how to do it, suggest, I'd be really happy. And then, yep, that's right. It's really hard to translate idioms. And then there's also translation errors. So this was pretty wild. So stanza selvaggia, which is like a user, I think it gets messed up too when there's a user. Yeah, she was mistranslated here. This one is one of those idioms that George was mentioning, which is a language model error. Combinati ifiumi actually means manhole, but they translated it as drain the rivers. The craziest one would be, did I put it here? Yeah, no, I didn't put it here. Anyway, would be the gender mistranslation. So if anyone is like saying like, okay, women are less represented, this is the reason why. It's because we have very bad translation models at this point. So I think it can be better. And then there are also interesting things like I found bare, which means coffins in Italian. It's actually means like just in Norwegian. So it's like, oh, it's not just poverty, it's the destruction of life, kind of like that. So yeah, I think this is one of the other issues here. Like these are the contextual nuances that I was mentioning. Devono darli al ospedale means they have to give them to the hospital. Here, you know, you could use like, oh, you can surrender their names or surrender their information over to the hospital. So I think I pretty much discussed the main things in detail here. And if you guys have any questions, I understand that there's a lot going on, but I think I'm out of time. Am I okay, David? Okay, cool. So future improvements, I really would like to promote the smart dashboard that San Diego State is doing. What that is a real-time topic modeler to show what's real, what's happening in real time in certain cities. There's also sentiment analysis work that I've been involved in. It's published in Google Scholar. I can give you the link for that as well. There's also social network analysis. Now, this I think is very useful because with social network analysis, you are going to see who are the major players and who are really, like in a pandemic or misinformation war or something, you want to know who the people are that are the movers and shakers that are influencing or that have resources. So if you're, for example, a community leader, then you can say like, oh, I have food, where do I give it to, right? And yeah, further studies in the same languages because language evolves, and then further studies in other languages to compare, to see more connections among other languages. I feel like that's a good future improvement as well. So, yep, without, I think that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for listening.
Any questions before we move on?
Oh yeah, I can keep this up if anyone has any questions.
I just wonder, there's a bunch of Twitter feed, there's a bunch of conversations. Did they actually influence any of the actions that people took as far as locking down or not locking down or anything such as that? Did they actually change any policies?
I am actually unsure of that one. However, I do know that there are, I don't know if you've seen the ones where they were singing on tops of balconies to show solidarity and to show support for the health workers during that time that were pretty much very burnt out. I think that was also a Twitter movement. Black Lives Matter there was also a huge movement. So yeah, I think those were the two main ones that are in social media.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? I think we have a question here. From a tech standpoint, have you considered extending towards big data tools like Spark, PySpark? Actually, yeah. The server that we have for this one was AWS. So I believe I could use Spark for that once I haven't actually tried it myself, but I've worked with Spark before, but for other data. Cool. I wonder if libraries exist out there that are agnostic of changing verbs and past tense, that group commoners. You know, I've been looking for that. And yes, Black Lives Matter was huge in Italy, for real. They have a huge population out there. But yeah, no, I've been looking for that library out there that would be pretty good with translating those things. I believe DeepL, what they're using is AI. I'm pretty sure they're using social media to kind of keep abreast of the language models, because language keeps on changing. There's a lot of like informal language out there that people are still trying to get to know of. Could use a bit of solidarity in America. Agreed. Essential workers. Yep. Agreed. So anyone else have questions?
I have a quick question about the LDA tables that you showed.
Oh yeah, sure.
The Italian on one side and the English on the other side.
Was it this one?
It had like the arrows between the two.
Oh, the arrows.
Yeah, so it's interesting that some of the topics are like high up on the Italian table are low down on English and vice versa. So is the English table generated solely from translations of Italian tweets? Or is that from English tweets from the Italian region or from Italy?
So the original one was supposed to be Italian, but like I said, there's already a lot of other languages that I've seen in there, like Ethiopian and Japanese and all these things.
I guess I'm just curious, is this like, is the fact that different topics are ranked differently down to like inaccuracies in the translation, or is it down to like different frequencies in like topics between different populations within the region that you're looking at?
I think what I looked at here first was the frequency of words. And a lot of it is based upon that. And then the topics are based upon which words are located within the same corpus, as well as within the time period that it was found.
Okay.
Sense?
So does this mean then, like, for example, for the rapper being mad at Twitter, does that mean English speakers in Italy care a lot more about that than Italian speakers?
Oh, are you saying like if it's more important if it's at the top or something?
Yeah. Oh, I guess I was under the impression this was like ranked.
Oh, okay. No, there is no ranking here. What I'm just pointing out is that how associated the topics are when they're translated. So like here, there were a lot of like people that were discussing this, and it was kind of like a recurring topic.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. I need a gelato incident tonight. Nice. When you said you had problems with LDA, what library were you using? Oh yeah, so there is a Python library for LDA viz, I believe. And so it worked better for me in R than in Python. And I believe there's kind of like this tiny glitch that just won't have the visualization show. Any other questions? I know Hobson, you had some. Preprocessed stemmer, lemmatizer, grammar corrector. Yep. Yeah, to deal with password or less typos and other. Yeah, I'd be so interested to see what other lemmatizers are out there. I know there's Spacey. I know there's Matplotlib. Yeah, it's probably that one. Okay. Any other questions before I go?